Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Auštrevičius. The Baltic States continue to resist Moscow's hybrid pressure, with the Kremlin's latest effort involving a major disinformation campaign, accusing the three countries of drawing up plans for a mass expulsion of Russian speakers, a difficult legacy of the Baltic's Soviet past. But it is not only Putin's machinations that may cause a collective headache in the region, as Lithuania is reportedly caught between a rock and a hard place over the export of fertilizers from Belarus. Joining us here today is Petras Auštrevičius, Lithuanian MEP from the Renewed Europe group. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Right, before we begin, a quick question. According to latest reports, US Senator Lindsey Graham has passed away following a brief and unexpected illness. He was one of the architects of the latest initiative to impose more stringent, more powerful sanctions against Russia. Do you think there is a risk that following his passing, this initiative could lose momentum?
Well, indeed, let me to express condolences to Lindsey Graham's family, close associates, and American nation. He was a great politician of United States of America. Indeed, kept a very close view on our region and had indeed a profound knowledge on the situation. His recent visit to Kiev is just another proof that his engagement was very sincere and real. Indeed, his passing away might be a major blow to the situation what comes to dealing with Russia. He was a key person, so that's why it might take some time, to find or to replace him and find another person, being in charge or leading Eastern, let's say, policy line. So that's why, well, indeed, it's a big loss. It's a wrong time, and indeed, he is irreplaceable.
And it couldn't have come at a more opportune moment for Moscow, unfortunately. Speaking of Moscow, there has been a disinformation campaign conducted against the Baltic States. So, for the sake of clarity, there are no plans for any sort of mass deportation of any Russian speakers from the Baltics, contrary to what the Russians would like us to believe.
We are democratic countries. Those kind of deportations or kind of persecution of national minorities, whatever language they speak, it's simply impossible by the constitution and by rule of law principles. So that's why the Kremlin and the Russian side, they exactly know what they do. They just, building up kind of hysteria. They're building up a new wave of propaganda and disinformation, which sometimes, unfortunately, works towards third countries, which are traditionally sensitive towards national minorities. So that's why I think this time Kremlin wants having this absolutely groundless accusations to raise a kind of negative attitude towards the Baltic countries. Some of them indeed have major Russian-speaking minorities, Latvia and Estonia in particular. So that's why, it's something coming back to 90s when, again, even under Yeltsin times, Russia tried to portray the Baltic countries like those who persecute and indeed oppress Russian-speaking population. But indeed, it's a wider policy line. I think it falls into kind of the anti-Ukrainian because, Donbass reasoning for occupation of Donbass was again a persecution of Russian speakers. So that's why nothing new in Kremlin. They simply repeat and building up their kind of flow of lies from Moscow.
Right, but the Donbass analogy is rather disturbing because what followed was a military attack. Do you think that Russia could be planning something? Are they looking for an excuse?
You know what? I am concerned that indeed you're right. It could be a kind of pretext or reason behind for any hybrid attack against the Baltics or any major provocations in the region. So indeed, Moscow needs some kind of so-called objective criteria. I mean, for major hybrid or military action. So it is a major source of concern for me as well, and I follow it closely. But since the European Union and European institutions in charge, I mean, they didn't come up with any, proof of those Kremlin lies. It is absolutely, empty kind of accusation. But nevertheless, I mean, Kremlin doesn't need any objective criteria to start with anything against third countries, unfortunately.
At this stage, on the other hand, it has been said that Russia is tied up in Ukraine, so an outright military offensive, any sort of invasion or incursion appears to be unlikely. Judging by what happened so far, what do you think could be the reasoning of the Kremlin? What could they want to achieve?
Well, indeed, if you look at the broader picture, the Baltics as well as the Baltic Sea countries, region countries, Poland included, NATO or EU member states, they are strongest, staunchest supporters of Ukraine. So this is one of the, ways how to try to distance them from supporting Ukraine, because, I mean, the message is clear. We will come against you as long as you are in support of Ukraine. So this is one of the ways to, divert our support for Ukraine because of the increasing threats, direct threats from Russia. So that's my reading of the situation. I mean, I don't see any other arguments in place. So that's why we have to be vigilant and send a very strong, repeated message that our support for Ukraine will be standing as long as it will take. And again, we have to be in full solidarity with our partners, and probably all EU and NATO should repeatedly send a message to Moscow: don't try.
So more psychological pressure from the Kremlin. Speaking of pressure, of course, at a very different level, but still, there have been reports that Lithuania is now juggling its responsibilities, essentially trying to think of a way to come out of a difficult conundrum. Apparently, there is pressure from the United States to allow trade in potash from Belarus to resume through the territory of Lithuania. Now, unfortunately, that would be contrary to EU regulations and sanctions imposed on the Lukashenko regime for cooperating with the Kremlin. Can you explain the situation further and tell us if there is a good solution for this problem at this stage?
Well, I have to tell you that, unfortunately, this is not ending story. It has a long history behind. Once the European Union imposed sanctions on Belarus fertilizers, I mean, which remain to be a major source of Belarus exports. So, meaning it's so important for Belarus, I mean, budgetary, to have a continuous flow of fertilizers. Now they are exported via Russian ports, not Klaipėda port, as before. And indeed, with certain dealings between Washington, D.C. and Minsk, I mean, we are not probably aware of full scale of details, but nevertheless, there is an attempt, I mean, to push Lithuania to reopen this kind of the fertilizers flow or export via Lithuanian railways and Klaipėda port, which is, by the way, economically very, very reasonable. I mean, it makes the export of fertilizers much cheaper than it means business-like, more possible. But, it is a very sensitive issue, I have to admit. This is not just about agriculture or fertilizers. It's about bringing more money for Lukashenko's regime, which is a very hostile regime against all of us. So
what is the logic here? Just a quick question. Yeah, because the Trump administration is said to be working on trying to pull the Lukashenko regime out of Moscow's orbit to make it more economically independent. Because so far, if Lukashenko had any economic problems, he would usually fly over to Sochi, hold talks with Vladimir Putin, usually getting what he wanted. But then again, Belarus becomes more and more dependent on Russia. Do you think that this dynamic can even be reversed at this stage?
Well, personally, I don't think. I mean, it may happen. Lukashenko is unconditionally tied to Putin. I mean, he vigorously tries, to escape final engagement into direct war against Ukraine and probably the West, generally speaking. He does it in a absolutely marvelous way. I mean, if you follow the events, but nevertheless, his indirect involvement is visible. It's proved. So that's why. To think that fertilizers might be the final factor for him to get rid of Putin or association with Putin, it's very naive. I don't believe that argument at all.
But there have been operations going in that direction. I mean, Lukashenko has freed political prisoners recently through the intermediation of members of the Trump administration. So that was a success. That included some high-profile political prisoners who had spent years in Lukashenko's jails. So there seems to be this sort of initiative going on. Do you think that it would have been worth it if, for example, the Trump administration presented a roadmap for achieving this that would be reliable? Would it be worth causing a rift with the European Union? Because the European Union doesn't want these fertilizers to go through Lithuania. That would be against the decision made in Brussels. That makes for a very uncomfortable decision-making process right now in Vilnius, right?
Indeed, we've seen certain visits of special representative from the United States to Minsk. There have been some, freed political prisoners. Nobody knows how many of them there have been replaced by new ones, because it's about individual release of opposition figures, of political prisoners, but not a systematic change within the regime. Lukashenko has no willingness, no indeed kind of goal, to change and to become. He has, in fact, no chance to do it. He's made of the Soviet, let's say, clay, for sure. And he will die being kind of his Soviet product, politically speaking.
So at this stage, given his mentality, it might not be worth it. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Hopefully, we'll be able to return to this discussion at a later stage. Petras Auštrevičius was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm Jan You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.